Wait, are we live? Oh, okay. We're just testing to make sure that the sound quality is good and as well as cameras are working. Okay, so we're good to go? Okay. Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we are going over a new species of ichthyosaur discovery as well as a new species of long-necked sauropod. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick, and you can view the full-screened um, short version on YouTube of the stream.
You just told them they can watch the short.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, in that sort of
Well, I don't know if it is on short right now.
format.
I can't tell.
Oh, okay. Take that with a grain of salt. So, starting off with Sci News, earliest Triassic ichthyosaur fossils unearthed on Spitsbergen. Paleontologists from Uppsala University and the University of Oslo have found the 250 million year old fossilized ichthyosaur remains in the Viking Hugda. I apologize sincerely to the Norwegian language if I am mispronouncing that. This is one of the few languages I'm going to apologize to for mispronouncing. Formation on the Arctic island of Spitsbergen. Let's see. Okay, so it seems like we're back in the Triassic period, so over 202 million years ago. However, there were a wide range of different species of marine reptiles throughout the period, so this would extend to further back than 252 million years ago. Even though 252 million years ago is the start of the Triassic period, as well as the Mesozoic era, or the age of the dinosaurs, there were different species of marine reptiles that technically arrived slightly earlier in the Permian, but they were very small and few in number. Another thing is that when it comes to the Triassic period and the Mesozoic, as well as when the dinosaurs first evolved, they wouldn't evolve for at least another 15 to 20 million years. Well, I'd say 15 to 18 million years. So this seems to be some species of large ichthyosaur, possibly a member of the Shastosaur lineage of ichthyosaurs. It could, however, be a member of the Symbospondylid, Symbospondylid lineage of ichthyosaurs. And then we have what seems to be either a large species of temnospondyle or maybe a nothosaur, but I think it says temnospondyle amphibian. Ichthyosaurs are a group of dolphin-shaped marine reptiles that played an important role as apex predators in Mesozoic oceanic ecosystems. These creatures originated and diversified from around 249 million years ago, around 3 million years after the end Permian mass extinction event, and their fossil record spans about 160 million years. Um, that's almost, well, actually, that might be about correct. Considering it seems to be that some of the earliest ichthyosaurs are somewhere between 245 to 247 million years old, and they seem to have died off somewhere around 90 to 95 million years ago. So that number is probably correct in their overall time span. So evolving at the beginning of the Triassic and going extinct right at the beginning of the early late Cretaceous period. So they had an elongated body, a relatively small head, a long snout, flipper shaped limbs, and dolphin like tail flukes. That would depend on the family of ichthyosaurs or different species of or members of the Shastosauridae lineage of ichthyosaurs that had relatively short snouts compared to their body size, compared to many other lineages of ichthyosaurs, which had very long and narrow snouts or skull structures which composed of small teeth that they would use for hunting different species of cephalopods, such as different types of squids, as well as ammonites. Not really hunting any other species of ichthyosaurs, probably not going after large species of fish, though would prey on smaller fish species, and not going after really any marine reptiles, probably not even youngsters, unless they had just hatched and it was of a small species. Let's look up.
This does look funny watching on shorts.
Let's look up another species of marine reptile, the Pixosaurus. So Pixosaurus. This is one of the earliest members of the Sauropod lineage of marine reptiles. Did it come up? Okay. Um, it is a close relative of the Plesiosaur family, or the group of long-necked marine reptiles, which is what the myth from Scotland, Loch Ness, came from, or Loch Ness monster. It's Loch Ness is the lake. But despite this animal having a very similar,
I have a question. What? Why did that come up? Is that supposed to be him?
no, that's neither of them. That seems to be probably Predator X hunting a Chimerosaurus, which would have occurred on the coasts of England as well as probably different parts of Belgium. Well, any islands
Wait a minute. Respell
within
that for me.
Pixosaurus, Pixosaurus.
Because it changed it.
Did something like a plesiosaur pop up? Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, or I'm starting it off with the wrong letter. Okay, well, let's look up something else. Basically, what I'm referring to, it would look something similar like the Chimerosaurus up top because it has a very similar plesiosaur morphology and overall physiology to it. However, it evolved somewhere around 247 million years ago during what?
You said you were going to give me another one.
Oh, well, I was just um referencing it, but okay. Let's look up Ichthyotitan. So ICHTHY OTITAN. Okay, so this animal existed towards the end of the Triassic period, and it was a member. It's a huge debate. It could be another lineage of ichthyosaurs, maybe possibly
Is that it?
Ichthyotitidae. Yes. This is a recently discovered species of ichthyosaur, I believe coming in from earlier in 2025. And I think it was also found off of the coast of England as well, off of a certain marine deposit. The dinosaurs amongst this individual are possibly members of the Coelophysidae lineage of theropod dinosaurs, though they could be members of the Neotheropoda lineage of theropod dinosaurs as well. But probably not much more than 10 feet in length. They're pushing 3 meters and weighing somewhere around 50 to 70 pounds or a little over 30 kilograms. So, focusing on the larger shastosaurs in general, if Ichthyotitan is a shastosaur, some species had relatively small snouts compared to their body size. There were others that had relatively long and narrow snouts, like their smaller ichthyosaur cousins or other members of Ichthyosauridae, such as different lineages of the family Ichthyosauridae, which only contained certain members of the Ichthyosauridae lineage, which consists of every single species in every family of ichthyosaur that has been discovered. The shastosaurs would have a short range or reign compared to the overall lineage of ichthyosaurs. So starting off at around 252 million years ago, 247 to 248 million years ago, to about 201 million years ago. For some reason, at the beginning of the Jurassic period, there was this massive die off of different lineages of marine reptiles, such as the giant ichthyosaurs, though the smaller species would continue to live on to the Jurassic. Let's also look into the Nothosaurus, which is another group of marine reptiles. Nothosaurus. So nothosaurs were not necessarily closely related to the ichthyosaurs or the plesiosaurs, and even the larger pliosaurs of later into the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. And you could even say the mosasaurs afterwards, into the late Cretaceous. The nothosaurs were a unique group of marine reptiles. These animals had almost semi-aquatic feet, yet it seems that for the most part, they probably just stuck to the water, or at least shallow coasts.
Somebody said cousin to the whales.
No, this is, or probably referencing the Ichthyotitan. These are all marine reptiles and not closely related to mammals. Mammals are their own lineage of synapsids, whereas animals like the Sauropterygians, which consists of virtually every single species of marine reptile, except the marine sea turtles of today. Though there were marine turtle species back in the Mesozoic or the time of the dinosaurs that were very distantly related to today's sea turtles. But um, that lineage first evolved towards the beginning of the Triassic and went extinct completely at the end of the Cretaceous period around 66 million years ago. Um, Also, when it comes to animals like the large ichthyotitan, that specific ichthyosaur, or that specific group would grow to sizes similar to today's blue whale, so possibly reaching or likely reaching over 140 tons and pushing somewhere around 85 feet in length, or possibly around 25 meters. Now, when it comes to the nothosaurs, these were a much smaller group of marine reptiles, both in overall species, at least that we have found so far, as well as size. This group, on average, was probably somewhere around 13 feet in length. They're pushing 4 meters. But the largest species, Nothosaurus giganteus, was probably reaching about 23 feet in length. They're pushing 7 meters. They also were not very heavily built and were likely not going after any large prey items. They have an overall weak physical structure. So, likely, they weren't really much of a threat to any of the other marine reptiles in the region despite their length. Um, so likely just feeding on different species of cephalopods, such as different species of squids, ammonites, and the different species of smaller fish. This is not an animal that would likely go after the different species of ichthyosaurs, maybe recent hatchlings, or some might even call the ichthyosaur young pups. Um, see, what's another thing? That's probably it. Maybe one of the small pterosaurs of the Triassic, which were not much more than 2 feet in total wingspan, or somewhere around 0.3 meters, but they would barely be a snack for the animal. This is another picture, I believe, of the Ichthyotitan severensis. And this animal inhabited off the coast of Europe around 210 million years ago, around the same time as different species of dinosaurs over in North America. As well as Europe, you had prosauropods like Plateosaurus roaming different parts of Germany, France, as well as England during this time, and possibly over into Greenland as well, considering all the supercontinents were combined at this point, even back into the Permian period. But you had animals like Coelophysis, different members of the crocodilomorph lineage over in North America, different members of Neotheropoda that would give rise to the Dilophosaurs and Cryolophosaurs of the early Jurassic. But the Shastosaurs, despite their size, were um, likely just feeding on different species of ammonites and fish. Okay, so let's head back to the article. Let's see. Most hunted fish or other small prey, but some fed on other marine reptiles, much like killer whales that hunt other marine mammal species today. Their fossils have been found on every continent, but they are particularly well known from Europe, East Asia, and North America. That is another thing about the ichthyosaurs, is that they have also been found in fragmentary remains, though, but in Antarctica as well. So even different areas of different marine deposits of Australia and Africa. And I'm mentioning these continents because it's has not mentioned them, and many do not know all 7 continents, as well as South America. So, according to the textbooks, reptiles first ventured into the open sea after the end Permian mass extinction, which devastated marine ecosystems and paved the way for the dawn of the age of dinosaurs nearly 252 million years ago. Specifically, the Mesozoic era, really, age of dinosaurs started somewhere between 235 and 240 million years ago. And even at the time, you didn't have this explosion of large creatures. The dinosaurs at first were fairly small. In fact, let's look up some of the first species, such as Eodromeus. So Eodromeus. This is a small species of theropod dinosaur from Argentina, or Patagonia, so southern South America, and existed in the region somewhere around 230 to 232 million years ago. And this animal was not necessarily the first dinosaur to evolve. It's still a mystery as to who, but is definitely one of the earliest.
Okay, this is kind of funny to me.
There are also different that could possibly pass for an Eodromius specimen, except Eodromius did not have large canines like a Dimetrodon or a Gorgonopsian. So one of the proto mammals from the Permian period. Eodromius was a fairly small carnivore, probably not reaching much more than 3.5 feet in length or pushing just over a meter and maybe weighing somewhere around um, 15 to 20 pounds or a little over 7 to 8 kilograms, and was likely feeding on different species of insects,
I
probably
gave
some
it
of
to him
this.
too.
Oh, this guy's a full saber tooth. Something happened. I'd say the rest of the physiology of this animal isn't necessarily bad. I do think for Eodromius, his arms in that AI picture might be a bit too muscular. However, this drawing or model has feathers. That is not something you see on early carnivores like Eodromius very often. It's almost like the members of the Herrerasauridae lineage of Triassic theropod dinosaurs that also inhabited South America and North America. Actually, the Herrerasaurs nearly covered the Earth. Not sure if we have. I don't believe we have found any over in Antarctica. But most of the other continents we have. Um, this Eodromius, they're almost giving it like a dromaeosaur sort of appearance. It is technically a predecessor to the later dromaeosaurs or the Saurosaurs in general. So it would give rise to a wide variety of different species of theropod dinosaurs, just like its close relative Eoraptor. I think it's probably paleontologist Paul Sereno holding this skull. But
I don't
this
know. I'm
was,
not sure what the skull is. It doesn't say.
I think it's an Eodromius. I believe he was part of the dig that discovered this animal back in the late 1990s. And this animal, yeah, as you can see by the skull, it's a very highly evolved species of dinosaur at this point. I mean, this is just extraordinary to see during like around 230 million years ago in the mid Triassic. Also, as you can see over on the upper jaw, very long um, upper teeth, which is very different from most other different types of carnivorous animals in general at that point. This would not become common until much later into the Triassic and then more into the Jurassic. So, really, after about 200 million years ago, this becomes much more common in different types of carnivorous dinosaurs.
Wait,
But at this
what are you
point, it's
talking about?
the just tooth structure
Oh, okay.
of the skull.
I don't
Um,
see any giant teeth either.
Well, compared to its body size,
Oh, you mean right here?
these are decent size. And also Eodromius had a decently robust jaw structure for a small dinosaur at that point, at least when it came to the carnivores. However, it had to watch out for many different types of crocodilomorphs that existed in the region.
Robbie Brown just said, "Did they eat humans?"
Yeah, humans wouldn't. Basically, well, did they eat our ancestors? Yes, different species of mammals at this point, but possibly Eodromius could hunt the little, you know, what 3 ounce mammals that were scurrying around in the mid Triassic, or possibly some of the rare proto. Well, I wouldn't call them rare, but there were certain species of proto mammals which were not true mammals, but very close relatives. Certain species did give rise to true mammals. But at this point, mammals were all egg layers. It wouldn't really be until the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods that we see mammals giving live birth or having the ability to give live birth. Um, Not just like different placentals, such as elephants, polar bears, and people, but even marsupials like kangaroos and the koalas. So, um, yeah, hominids, let me rephrase that. Primates in general probably wouldn't evolve until just after the Cretaceous ended. So, somewhere between 60 and 65 million years ago is where you see some of the first true species of primate. There are certain theories that at the very end of the Cretaceous, around somewhere between 66 and 66.5 million years ago, that there might have been certain species of proto primates. But I think it's with possibly Purgatorius, the genus. But so far, it just seems to be more accepted in the paleo community that it was right after the Mesozoic ended. So let's hop from Eodromius to back to the article. As the story goes, land based reptiles with walking legs invaded shallow coastal environments to take advantage marine predator niches that were left vacant by this cataclysmic event. It's supposed to say take advantage of. Anyway, this would happen in a wide variety of different marine reptile lineages where their ancestors were terrestrial or living on land, and then eventually became very semi aquatic and then fully aquatic later on in their evolution and evolving fins. This is what we see with the evolution of whales into the Cenozoic era. So during the age of mammals, after the dinosaurs. Over time, these early amphibious reptiles became much more efficient at swimming and eventually modified their limbs into flippers, developed a fish like body shape, and started giving birth to live young, thus severing their final tie with the land by not needing to come ashore to lay eggs. That is another thing when it comes to marine reptiles. It seems that all that were completely aquatic and did not have the physical ability to come onto land. Otherwise, they would suffocate under their own weight. They would um, dry themselves to death or simply evaporate. I'm trying to think of. Uh,
Saying they would dehydrate?
yeah, but there's another term. It's not hitting me. It's what happens to beached whales a lot of the time, and basically sunbake. I guess they would cook on the beach, but the carnivorous dinosaurs would not be complaining, nor would the pterosaurs. Let's see. So, um, oh, I think what I meant to say was uh, all fully aquatic marine reptiles would have given live birth. There were earlier theories that different species of pliosaurs, mosasaurs, and long-necked marine reptiles like the plesiosaurs, such as Plesiosaurus, Cryptoclitus, Chimerosaurus, would have come onto land to lay their eggs, but it doesn't seem, or further analyses on their overall morphology and physiology just shows that these animals were not capable of moving on land. So that was more of a death sentence for them. So they simply would have given live birth, and they did have the capacity to give birth to at least, let's say, well, there are certain species in which we have found full-grown young encased in, well, fully developed young encased in the rib cage, and I'm not just referencing the ichthyosaurs. I'm also referencing different species of plesiosaurs as well. In 2014, the researchers unearthed a series of 11 articulated tail vertebrae from an ichthyosaur in the Luce. hmm, Lusitania member of the Viking Hogda Formation on the southern shore of Icefjord in western Spitsbergen. The Viking Hogda Formation is over in Svalbard, so it's not just different marine reptiles that we're finding here. There are also polar bears presently. Unexpectedly, these vertebrae occurred within rocks that were supposedly too old for ichthyosaurs. Also, so these are older than supposedly any ichthyosaur has been discovered. That is quite fascinating. Also, rather than representing the textbook example of an amphibious ichthyosaur ancestor, the vertebrae are identical to those of geologically much younger, large bodied ichthyosaurs, and even preserve internal bone microstructure showing adaptive hallmarks of fast growth, elevated metabolism, and a fully oceanic lifestyle. Well, I mean, I would assume that these animals were fully aquatic, as what is what it's stating by being fully oceanic. Geochemical testing of the surrounding rock confirmed the age of the fossils at approximately 2 million years after the end Permian mass extinction. Whoa, that's around 250 million years ago. These would be literally the oldest species of ichthyosaurs to be found. That's quite astonishing. Also, when it mentions elevated metabolism, it's very likely, and there seems to be evidence in later Jurassic species of ichthyosaurs, like literally members of Ichthyosauridae, such as Ichthyosaurus, that these animals might have been warm blooded or ectothermic. And this is also something that you can find in certain species of fish today,
Wait, how many ichthyosaurs were there?
over 100 different species. Let's see. Given the estimated timescale of oceanic reptile evolution, this pushes back the origin and early diversification of ichthyosaurs to before the beginning of the age of dinosaurs. Well, we already knew that. 247 million years ago, 240 million years ago, there weren't any species of dinosaurs on land. There were certain species of archosauromorphs that looked very similar to smaller species of dinosaurs, or almost like you combined a prosauropod, or like an ancestor to the long-necked dinosaurs, a small theropod like a not necessarily a coelophysa, but possibly the eodromius, and maybe even a crocodilomorph slightly. And that would be the certain members of the Archosauromorph lineages or lineage were very closely related to the dinosaurs, but they were not authentic Saurischians or Ornithischians, which are the two lineages of dinosaurs. And mysteriously, they went extinct at the end of the Triassic, around 202 million years ago. Possibly also being true reptiles and not necessarily being warm blooded dinosaurs. Thereby forcing a revision of the textbook interpretation and revealing that ichthyosaurs probably first radiated to marine environments prior to the extinction event. Excitingly, the discovery of the oldest ichthyosaur rewrites the popular vision of Age of Dinosaurs as the emergence time frame of major reptile lineages. Yeah, the Sauropodians, this probably means that different species of plesiosaurs, different species of certain marine turtles also evolved much earlier as well. Pliosaurs hadn't really evolved yet, so the large, scald, short-necked marine reptiles that would give rise during the or evolved during the Jurassic, so somewhere between 180 and 200 million years ago. It now seems then that at least some groups predated this landmark interval, with fossils of their most ancient ancestors still awaiting discovering in even older rocks on Spitsbergen and elsewhere in the world. Yeah, it seems to be the case. I'm not sure about the ichthyosaurs in general. Certainly is possible, but I would assume other marine reptiles that had already evolved during the early Triassic. Okay, let's head over to the next discovery, but we're probably going to travel a bit forward in time. So, from Sci News, new sauropod dinosaur unearthed in China. Since the sauropods won't evolve until somewhere around 175 million years ago. And at that point, they weren't very large. The largest probably reaching somewhere between 55 to 60 meters, or pushing somewhere around 55 to 60 feet, and somewhere around 18 meters. Uh, Probably not weighing much more than 12 to 17 tons, which was immense for the mid Jurassic. But for sauropods in general, it wasn't very large. A new genus and species of Titanosauriform sauropod dinosaur with an unusual tail has been identified from a partial skeleton found in northeastern China. Northeast China, no, north, yeah. There have been a wide variety of different species of hadrosaurs found here, certain species of tyrannosaurs, and as well as sauropods and even different species of dromaeosaurs or the raptors. So it's good to see that we have found another species of Titanosauromorph, which is possibly not a true species of Titanosauridae. It is a member of Titanosauridae. The newly identified dinosaur species existed during the Barremian age of the early Cretaceous epoch, about 125 million years ago. So Yeah, this is the time shortly before Titanosauridae, so likely this is a predecessor to the lineage. And what is also interesting is that this part of the Cretaceous period and even China, it does get certain attention, like compared to South America at this point, because you have a group of sauropods called the Mamenchosaurids that existed at this point during the early Cretaceous in China. Mamenchosaurus is probably the most famous genus or species of sauropod from China. And also, what probably helps give its fame is the smaller tyrannosaurs inhabited China at this point. Also, well, technically much earlier into even the late Jurassic, so somewhere between 145 and 150 million years ago, but there were already other Mamenchosaurids, Guanlong and Dilong, which were not much larger than the Raptor Deinonychus, so pushing around 10 feet in length, or around 3 meters, and probably not weighing much more than 200 pounds, or a little over 90 kilograms. Okay, let's see what else occurred. Scientifically named Ruxenia zanghai. Zanghai. The ancient creature had a stick like tail and an estimated length of about 12 meters or 39 feet. Okay, so it's on the smaller end of sauropods, or you could even say maybe it's a medium sized species. Though, if it's weighing less than 11 or 12 tons, it's a small species of sauropod. It belonged to the Titanosauriforms, a conspicuous and diverse group of sauropod dinosaurs. That is interesting. It had a stick like tail. So I guess it's one of those species of sauropods that was not very robustly built, at least over on the tail end. Though, at least in the image or this drawing, it's quite skinny. Okay, let's bring up a species of carnivore from the Cretaceous period. So this is a large species of carnivore for not Asia but South America. Tyrannotitan. So Tyrannotitan. Despite its name, this is not a member of the Tyrannosaur lineage, so it is not closely related to T Rex, Guanlong, or Tarbosaurus. Yeah, it's not him. That is too Tyrannosaur like. So, it should look more of like a Carcharodontosaur, for it is a member of the Allosauridae lineage of theropod dinosaurs, which consisted of the allosaurs, but it's not a member of Allosauridae. It's a member of Carcharodontosauridae. So, the Tyrannotitan is actually a close relative of Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus. Well, actually, probably a bit more Mapusaurus, considering both lived in South America during the late Cretaceous around 98 million years ago, and were likely at certain points, probably towards the end of certain species' reigns, but um, yeah, likely competitors. So Tyrannotitan was somewhere around 40 feet in length. They're pushing a little over 12 meters, and probably weighed somewhere around 8 to 9 tons. And that would also be quite a large Tyrannotitan as well. But it was, unlike Giganotosaurus and Mapusaurus, a bit more robust, or just overall also more stocky compared to those other species of Carcharodontosaurids. This is much more, these depictions are much better. Or it actually looks like a Carcharodontosaur and not like a Jurassic Park T Rex. Not that, I mean, I like the Jurassic Park T Rex model, but that's just far off. So, Carcharodontosaurs, like the Tyrannotitan, they did score larger arms compared to the body size, compared to, per se, the Tyrannosaurs in general, the Abelisaurs. However, it's still a bit of a debate as to whether or not they would have used them for helping somewhat causing their prey to, or cause their prey to bleed to death. considering it would be very risky getting their small arms up close to something that weighs over 30 tons, depending on the sauropod that they're feeding on, if they're hunting in a pack. Even a smaller species around its size would be quite a risk for just touching it. But likely just using their over, 5.5 foot long skull, or pushing somewhere around
It looks
1.7
like he's smiling.
meters. Yeah, he does. Yeah, it looks like. I mean, this is a pretty good model of a Tyrannotitan. It's really giving that Carcharodontosaur look, and it is interesting. It does look more of like Carcharodontosaurus itself, except Carcharodontosaurus has much more protruding horn brows
Wait,
or in front of the eye sockets.
there's Todd said three-fingered Allosaurus.
Um, well, most members of Allosauridae, so the large family of theropod dinosaurs that consisted of Allosaurus, did have three fingers, and so did Tyrannotitan. Um,
Wait, how many Allosaur bleh, say it?
Members of Allosauridae
Yeah, how many members?
are there? There are over 80 to 90 different members of Allosauridae. The Allosaurus itself, there have only been around three different species of Allosaurus that have been discovered. And they are all members of specifically Allosauridae, which is a small family of Allosauroideae. Now,
You're not
Tyrannotitan.
saying there's only been 3 Allosauruses discovered.
Oh well, three. So Allosaurus is a genus of theropod dinosaur from the late Jurassic. So inhabiting different parts of Colorado, Spain, Portugal, and well, much of the central United States around 150 million years ago. But there have only been species such as Allosaurus fragilis, Allosaurus europus, and there is a third species. I think it's Allosaurus himagensis that have been discovered. There might have been a fourth one, but it was, I believe, disputed as being invalid, and this was years back. So there was also another member or another creature called Saurophaganax that it was long debated as being part of the Allosaur family, but it seems to, in the past couple of years, have more in common with a sauropod. So it is no longer looked at as a member of the theropod lineage.
Whoa, whoa. They mixed a sauropod?
Yeah, I think they found more bones recently of the genus, and it turns out that just by more recent analysis, this is a sauropod, not a carnivore. It's not that occasionally, sauropods would have smushed smaller carnivores into pancakes, but they wouldn't feed on them. So let's go back to the article. These dinosaurs inhabited almost all land masses during the Cretaceous times and contain more than 50 described species. Oh, by the way, the Tyrannotitan would not have hunted this specific sauropod that was discovered, considering it lived much later into the Cretaceous and also in South America, which was completely separated from Asia at this point. Titanosauriforms is a large clade of sauropod dinosaurs whose members were present and common in most Cretaceous terrestrial ecosystems, said Dr. Hinyu Mo from the Natural History Museum of Guangxi and colleagues. It sounds like that last name sounds like the ichthyosaur in one of those Land Before Time movies. They named him Mo. Although the number of named Cretaceous titanosauriforms has dramatically increased from Asia in recent years, most of them are represented by fragmentary material. There have been certain titanosaur species that have been discovered with more intact than just bits of vertebrae here and there, like full um, femur bones or thigh bones, shin bones, ankle, toe bones, like the whole leg structure it has been preserved. Certain tail vertebrae, certain parts of the rib cage, and I believe even certain cervical vertebrae or neck vertebrae as well. Though this does happen with a wide variety of different species of dinosaurs where they're quite fragmentary.
What are you asking about ankylosaur?
Let's see. So, with the caudal vertebral series being especially poorly known, the new find increases the diversity of early branching titanosaur forms in China and highlights the tail morphological diversity within this clade. The well preserved partial skeleton of Ruxinnia zangi was recovered from the lower Cretaceous Yixin Formation at Huiyangzai in China's Liaoning province. The new species was part of the Zhou biota, an early Cretaceous terrestrial and freshwater ecosystem preserved in a multi layered rock formation in northeastern China. By the way, there have been a wide variety of different marine deposits. I know it mentioned freshwater. Well, let me rephrase that. Fossil formations, where certain species of dinosaur, it's usually few in number, have been preserved, but it's a haven for different species of marine reptiles, like even plesiosaurs. I'm thinking of some South American, I believe it's from Colombia, fossil formation, where there was a sauropod discovered, but all the rest of the fossils were marine reptiles. Okay, let's see, who else should we bring up?
Was he swimming?
I wonder if it was swimming or there was some flood and it ended up being washed out to sea. I'm not entirely sure how that occurred. I think it was also one of the only formations it's been discovered in. Let's see, who else? You know what? Let's bring up a large species of titanosaur called Nemegtosaurus. So Negtosaurus.
Okay, let's try AI again. Tell me how bad it is.
Yep. That's probably the worst fail. And it looks like for the T-Rex, they copied one of those T-Rex toys and just slightly morphed the overall look. Well, this is better. So, Nemegtosaurus lived in Mongolia, possibly China as well, but its fossils have only been found in the Nemegt formation of the country, specifically Mongolia, dating to around 71 million years ago, or during the early Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous. And this animal is a member of the Titanosauridae lineage of sauropod dinosaurs, as well as more specifically Lithostrodiae. So Nemegtosaurus could reach somewhere around 80 feet in length, or pushing over 22 meters, and probably weighed somewhere around 40 tons. So this animal, it's a bit of a debate as to whether or not it would have um, held its neck structure upright or in a vertical way, as opposed to horizontal, like certain earlier depictions of diplodocids have been, such as Diplodocus. But looking at this animal, it's very likely that it had quite a probably robust overall core structure compared to certain other lineages of titanosaurs, and as well having very robust leg structures as well, and even when it comes to the neck. So Nemegtosaurus isn't necessarily a very skinny species of titanosaur.
Those legs are funny.
Yeah, when it comes to this specific model, so this is from Prehistoric Planet. I think it's like episode 3, maybe episode 2. And it takes place in different desert ecosystems, which, at least in the show, would not have been able to contain any of the life that's in them. Even the small mononychids, the um, members, close relatives, of the alrosaurid theropod lineage, would have probably starved due to the lack of simply termites in the region. But all these other large hadrosaurs, so the duck-billed dinosaurs like the Barsboldia and this, the titanosaurs like the Nemegtosaurus, unless it's supposed to be another species of Mongolian sauropod, which it could be. Also, their necks are a bit warped, and even the largest dark pterosaurs in the middle, which is an unidentified species closely related to Quetzalcoatlus. But yeah, the legs. It's almost like I'm looking at a not even a boar. I'm not sure how to uh, describe that, but this is bad. The neck's a bit out of proportion. It's too straight, or almost looks like one of those 1930s or 1940s pictures from Charles R. Knight. But like, I do admire Charles R. Knight's pictures. Just certain reconstructions are a bit off. Actually, maybe it's not his. It might be a certain movie or maybe even comic that I'm thinking of,
Another smiley.
or one of those goofy like 1960s looks. Let's see. Oh yeah, they did a lot of almost like he has barnacles on his face. He decided to become a bit of a baleen whale for a little bit, or one of those gray whales. Besides that, um, I do like this overall reconstruction. Also, the skin morphology is much better in this case. The other problem with that prehistoric planet depiction is that it has too much of a brachiosaur sort of skull and even somewhat neck physiology, but even for brachiosaurs, they should be slightly slanted or a bit curved. Also much more robust. Brachiosaurus for a long time had fairly too skinny of a neck structure, at least in reconstruction, kind of like with its close relative, Giraffatitan. Let's see. But Nemectosaurus, this animal, it's also good to see where the nostrils are. Earlier reconstructions of practically all sauropods, the skull or the nostrils were placed towards the top of the head, which is fairly off. There are even certain depictions of the animals as possibly having a trunk, which is an interesting theory. But from further analyses, this was likely not possible. Also, seeing where the ears are, the little hole or the darker spot on the center. Well, I guess towards the side of the skull. That's good to see. Likely, these animals didn't have a very good sense of smell. Probably even their sense of sight wasn't very good, but they probably had a relatively good sense of hearing. Also, hearing in like mid to low frequency sound. So, a lot like today's elephants. It is also possible that these long necked sauropods would have roamed in herds of at least 20 to 30 individuals, which is would need to obtain tens of tons of vegetation each day just to survive. And full grown.
Tens of tons?
Um, well, you're talking about 30 individuals. If they're all,
Oh, I thought you were saying each.
yeah, if they're all adults. No, no, each. Well, they're still having to take in somewhere around, say, at least 3,000 pounds or a little over 1,400 kilograms of um conifer leaves each day. This could consist of different species of redwoods. It might be even going after ginkgo trees, possibly cycads now and then. Let's see. Yeah, despite his look, I mean, these animals had a a decent amount of intelligence to survive for, I'd say, a little over 120 million years. They did very well. Okay, let's head over to the article. The new species was part of the Jahol biota in early Cretaceous. Oh, I already said that. Ruxania zengai. So, okay, back to this smaller titanosaur. Is a medium-sized titanosaur form. To be honest, it's small, but represents the largest sauropod dinosaur reported from the Jahol biota. With wait a second, Jahol. That sounds familiar. I wonder if this is adjacent to the area that Sinornithosaurus. So these are small. Actually, let's look him up. This is a small species of theropod dinosaur. It's a member of the Paravest lineage. So Sinornithosaurus. Let me do it again.
Yeah.
Okay. Sinornithosaurus. So, that would have also this animal would have thrived in the conifer forest where likely, this specific species of titanosaur, the Ruxanii, not the Nemectosaurus. Oh, that's an older model of him. It's like one of the ones from like the 1960s or 1970s. Not bad. I mean, good, great for the time. Oh, yeah, it's a lot better. It's is a close relative of different species of dromaeosaurs during the Cretaceous period, as well as into the late Jurassic. But this animal inhabited northeastern China around 125 million years ago, so likely coexisting with this sauropod, but was probably just preying on different species of smaller lizards, amphibians. However, it does score small sickle claws. So the question is, would this animal be preying on the slightly larger ornithopods in the region? At least the different species of ornithopods are probably around 3 to 4 feet in length. They're pushing a little over 1.3 meters and probably not weighing much more than 30 to 40 pounds or a little over 15 kilograms. Oh, yeah, that's another one. Okay, well, they are depicting it. Hunting another relative of the Paravis lineage of theropods, possibly even an early species of birds, considering this is a close relative of the birds. The birds were already um, thriving throughout the early Cretaceous period and would continue to until the end of the Cretaceous as well. I mean, they still exist with us today. But they first evolved in Germany around 150 million years ago during the late Jurassic. And Sinornithosaurus was probably preying on some of the earliest species. Sinornithosaurus was probably somewhere around 2 to 2.5 feet in length. They're pushing a little over zero point 0.8 meters when it came to the overall wingspan. This animal did not have the ability to fly, but it likely could glide from tree to tree. Let's see. Now, this seems to be a bit of an older model. I like the overall ecosystem
It's
background, but
slightly blurry.
it doesn't have any lips. Okay, this is from Planet Dinosaur. It's not a bad reconstruction, especially for 2011. I mean, it was pretty good. Problem is it doesn't have lips. Um, not enough feather plumage. I think there should be more. And they also portrayed the animal as being venomous. Actually, it was a bit of a theory with this animal, but there isn't really any full proof for Ornithosaurus to have had venomous grooves on its teeth. They just slightly resembled those of a Gila monster. So that's where the theory came from. But it's in much of the paleo community, that theory has been disputed. So, yeah, I guess let's go back to the article. Just thought I mentioned this little carnivore. Okay, with the length of the femur, so the Jehol biota is a fossil basin. The length of the femur or the thigh bone larger than those of Leoningatitan sinensis and Dongbatitan dongi. Oh yeah, Dongbatitan. I believe that's a sauropod that reaches somewhere around 50 to 60 feet in length or a little over 17 meters. The two titanosauriform sauropods also from the Yixian Formation. Its discovery adds a new element not only to the poorly preserved sauropod dinosaur in the Jehol biota. No, I mean, sauropods are definitely not common within the Jehol biota, but it still is really good to see that we're finding more and adjacent to animals like Sinornithosaurus. There were certain other creatures in the area. I believe there was a species of allosaur called Sinraptor. No, 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 not allosaur. I believe a megalosaur called Sinraptor. So reaching somewhere around 20 to 23 feet in length. They're pushing 6 to 7 meters. Probably weighed somewhere around 1,500 pounds or a little over 700 kilograms. And likely fed on younger sauropods in the region. So it just, but also to the already extensive diversity of titanosaur forms in the Middle Early Cretaceous ecosystems of East Asia. Yeah, it is interesting the amount of fauna. So fauna refers to different species of animals. Flora refers to the different species of plants. So that come from at least this part of Asia, especially over into corresponding Mongolia and even certain areas of Russia. Russia tends to obtain, especially in Siberia or Eastern Russia, um, it tends to obtain different species of dinosaurs a bit later into the Cretaceous, so pushing somewhere around 80 to 85 million years ago before we start seeing a wide range of different species of hadrosaurs. There have been certain fragmentary remains of tyrannosaurs, but there doesn't seem to be any definitive species that has been found in the region. At least they're too fragmentary to identify at this point. So, thanks for joining. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And happy International Ice Age Month. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.